I've never seen this movie before. Wait, is it from my past? Now my nightmares have been unearthed on the Repressed Nostalgia podcast.
Man, we're good.
Right? Yeah, so...
I feel like if we were to make a third song, we'd really nail it.
Do you think that? So yeah, I guess we're starting. We're here doing our first episode of Repressed Nostalgia. Very similar to Bullied Nostalgia, only in this case, it's movies that scarred us as kids that we tried not to remember. And so I'm hoping to have this episode out in time for Halloween. We'll see. That means some crunch from me. But after hearing the Repressed Nostalgia theme song, it's got that deep, like, Dracula vibe to it. So I feel like I really want to get it out in time for Halloween. The movie that we're doing today is not a good Halloween movie. And honestly...
No, it's a much better Christmas movie.
Yeah, there is some... You're wearing Christmas jammies? Yeah, there is some Christmas
We're wearing a
vibes
Christmas
going on
mustache.
But let's jump into our regular stuff. I'm Timothy Nesbitt, and I'm joined by Kylan Nesbitt.
Hello.
Jonathan Nesbitt.
That's my name.
And Chance Nesbitt.
Hello.
This is the Bullied Nostalgia podcast, and you can reach us at bulliedpod@gmail.com if you have any suggestions or things you'd like us to do differently in the future. This episode is a little bit different because, as mentioned, we're mixing it up, making it a little spicy with Repressed Nostalgia. So the movie that we're doing today is the classic Jumanji movie with Robin Williams. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's kind of embarrassing to me that this is my Repressed Nostalgia. It is not scary at all.
What? Those monkeys were terrifying.
Okay, well, yes, we will speak to that, but that's what I mean. When this movie came out, it spoke specifically to some trauma in my life. Number one, I had two animals that I was scared of. Sharks and spiders.
No. Oh,
and there's some big spiders in this movie. Number two, in northern Alberta, we would have to deal with mosquitoes a lot, but none of them were big enough to punch holes through windshields. And so those ones were traumatic. I'm pretty confident I had a nightmare with giant mosquitoes after this movie. And number three, as John mentioned, computer graphics were not great at the time. And these monkeys look like something spawned from the depths of hell. They are creepy. But before we get into the traumatic stuff, I assume there's someone in the world who doesn't know what Jumanji is.
I don't think so.
Okay, I could be wrong. Never mind. Chance, you want to give us a brief overview of what Jumanji is?
So, from the get-go, tonally, this movie is very different from the remakes. The remakes are very comedic and lighthearted. The original movie, I genuinely said this during the watch time. I'm like, someone could convince me that this was a movie based on a Stephen King novel. It has that same kind of horrible, supernatural, just try and get through the end kind of energy through it.
What's interesting about that is this is based on a book. It's based on a children's book from 1981 that was like a picture book. But yes, it does have some inspiration there. Do you want to tell us what the movie is?
Yeah. So the movie starts with two characters, Alan and Sarah. They're a pair of children, and they find a board game. And they open it up and start playing it, and Alan gets sucked in. Sarah, terrified by the experience, runs away. 30 years later, two children by the name of Peter and Judy play the board game and start unleashing unspeakable horrors from within, including the now much older Alan. So then Alan, Sarah, Peter, and Judy have to finish the game in order to undo all the terrible things that have been released by it.
Yeah, so essentially it's a jungle themed board game, and every time you roll the dice and land on a space, it does something jungle themed to the world. I.
Have a lot of questions.
Okay, what are the questions?
Where did this board game come from? Does the children's storybook explain the origins of this jungle board game?
I don't know. I've not read the book, but I doubt it. It does seem weird. I think we open up in it's like the 1800s or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
1869.
So, how common were dice rolled board games back then? Like, are they implying that this is the first board game? I don't know.
Man,
I
that
mean,
was a terrible
I
experience.
know, especially around the age of like, I think the 1200s, when seafaring was really popular, everyone gambled with dice back then.
Right. I just mean, I don't know what board games existed back then. Like checkers, chess, those are all ancient games. But I don't know about...
Do you think those kids invented board games after playing Jumanji?
That's what Guy was saying, is that one of those kids was like, oh, that was such a traumatic experience. But what if it was fun? Actually, the guy who made up Jumanji, the book, his name was Chris von Oldberg.
Old man.
He actually said that his inspiration for inventing Jumanji was that
he himself, as a child, played a board game.
Yes, he invented it by playing it. No, John. He played Monopoly, and he said every time he'd roll the dice, nothing would happen. There'd be nothing interesting about the spaces he landed on. And so he said, what if there was a game that every place that you rolled to actually had something interesting to look forward to? And so that was the conception of Jumanji.
But instead it was what you roll is something you're terrified of.
What you roll is something Tim is terrified of, I think is...
So I'm just really curious about the storybook. Was it like, oh, I rolled a space and I got cotton candy and unicorns? Or was it like spiders and...
Oh, no, it was jungle. Yeah, it was this. Like pythons or whatever.
Would we watch a prequel movie about Jumanji? Jumanji Origins. Jumanji Beginnings, where we get to watch someone make the board game.
No, I would not. Although...
Okay, would you watch a movie about the guy who wrote the story?
So, fun fact I just pulled up. The word Jumanji is a Zulu word that means many effects.
That's cool.
I think one thing that I will say is they've mastered the dramatic reveal in this movie. It's like when they crack open that chest and he pulls out the game for the first time, it's covered in sand, and the sand...
But it like perfectly slides down
of it, and it's like the kids who buried that 100 years earlier were like, oh, no, like put sand on top. It's going to look really cool when somebody opens this.
Well, they do that same effect 4 times throughout the movie. Like someone will lift up the book and sand or dust will fall down, perfectly revealing the name. It happens so often.
What happens when somebody finds this? Well, they'll have a really cool sand effect. John, if you're wondering, the story of the book is 2 kids go to a park, they find a board game, take it home, there's a warning, and then like lions and stuff show up when they roll dice.
It's the same thing, only it isn't 2 generations like in the movie.
Yeah, that was interesting. The sense that we start off the movie in the 1800s and these 2 kids are like, we gotta bury this chest because it's terrible. The Jumanji game's in it. And then we forward to the 60s. Happens again, and then we go to the 90s. Typically, you don't get 2 fast forwards in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Oh, okay, I'm going to finish up with the book. I think it's much more of a, whoa, monkeys are in the house and doing crazy things instead of we're in danger.
Sure.
Oh, it's more like a Dr. Seuss book, like, whoa, 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 the cat in the hat is here. You roll those dice. He's making a mess of your house.
So...
Thing 1 and 2 have showed up.
The standout actor in this movie for me, I expected to be Robin Williams, but I just thought Bonnie Hunt did an amazing job.
That was Sarah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was in Beethoven earlier in the season.
Praise Beethoven. I got it. I won. I win. Jumanji.
Jumanji. We like to stick with certain actors and actresses and follow their careers, but I felt like she was just really good. For people who haven't seen the movie, she was scarred as a child by watching her close friend get sucked into a board game. And so she spent the last 20 years going to therapy sessions and being told that it never happened. And so when she gets reintroduced to the game as an adult, she's grappling with the realities of it being real. And she's just a funny little psycho. She's just super quirky and weird and antisocial. And
I wrote in my notes that everyone in this movie is psychotic. Literally every single one of them has a different mental issue. Peter can't speak since his parents died. Judy is a compulsive liar. Sarah has post-traumatic stress disorder. And Alan is just Tarzan. A single one of them is mentally stable.
The police officer's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, poor Carl.
I feel really bad for the auntie. She's just doing her best, and everything bad just happens to her, and then she doesn't even get a happy ending. They time travel, so none of it happens.
I don't know. I kind of feel really bad for the cop car.
For the inanimate object. That cop car does get abused, though. It's true. I'm honestly surprised that he keeps trying to drive it. Like, there's nothing left of it.
Yeah, the brakes stopped working, and then they started working again. Anyways.
Massive plot hole. What a terrible movie.
Yeah, I turned the movie off after that.
Just something I really enjoyed in this movie was definitely the puppeteering and just like how they made stuff look. One of the ones I wrote down because I thought it was super cool was the yellow plant.
Yeah, the plant.
In the movie, there are two types of carnivorous plants. There's one that shoots poison darts at you, and another one that reels you into a big mouth. So like it paralyzes you, and then it takes you in. But the thing I really loved the big yellow plant is that it had fur. It had fur and mandibles, like a spider.
Yeah,
that's
we
so
commented
cool
on that too. I was like, that is such a weird, cool design. It's almost like a mammal, but it's a plant.
It's almost like an insect or something, like a tarantula.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Chance, had you seen this movie before?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen it before?
I'm assuming I have.
Okay.
I've definitely seen Zathura.
Okay. But you didn't remember this movie?
I didn't remember much, no.
Okay.
Zathura is not like Jumanji, I would say.
Well, no, it's the spiritual successor. It's also based on a children's book by the same author. It essentially is the same thing. It's just in space.
And it doesn't have Robin Williams.
And it doesn't have Robin Williams. That's true. So let's talk about my embarrassing trauma. Number one, like I said, I was scared of spiders. But rewatching the spiders in this movie, they're really poorly made remote control cars.
Like, there's points in time where, like, the spiders will be, like, on somebody's legs, and they'll be sitting there for, like, 3 seconds, and then it just gets punted out of the room.
Or they'll, like, drive forward and backwards.
They just kind of, like, rock back and forth.
Yeah, it was not scary at all. And then the mosquitoes, I mean, there was some tension there, I guess, because everyone that the mosquitoes bit dies, maybe? But the real horror is the faces on those monkeys.
Yeah, you don't see their faces up close often, but when you do, it's not pleasant.
It's always really bad with the monkeys, too, because they'll, like, leave frame, and you're like, okay, the monkeys are gone, thank goodness. And then they'll reappear on a motorcycle.
With a shotgun.
Yeah, they were the recurring character of this movie.
Yeah, they had more FaceTime than some of the human characters. So this movie was made on a $65 million budget. And came back with $262 million at the box office, which is massive. Not as massive of a hit as the first Beethoven, because that was made for pennies, but still a huge success, which is why we still live in a Jumanji world where they keep going back to the well, even though now it's video games and stuff.
Yeah, let's go back to the Beethoven well for once. How about that?
The video game.
Robo Beethoven.
So minor spoilers. No, I'm going to spoil this movie. It's a kid's movie. Honestly, it doesn't matter if I spoil it. The movie starts with these two kids in the 70s playing the board game. One of them gets sucked into the board game. Fast forward 20 years, two new kids start playing, and then the four of them beat the game so that it resets the world so that none of it ever happened. They go back to the 70s. And then those two kids from the beginning, Alan and Sarah, fall in love, get married, and then accept the kids that they would later play the board game with from another reality into their lives, and everyone lives happily ever after.
But they're creeps.
Yeah, so there's some time travel questions that I have. It's clear that Sarah and Alan, Bonnie Hunt and Robin Williams' characters, remember what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's vaguely insinuated that the kids do,
but I don't think they do.
It's not outright said, and the rules of time travel would be that they never played the game. They never had the game in their ownership. Yeah. So those versions don't exist. So I'm pretty sure they're just creeps, like Kai said. I don't think the kids know them.
It's really hard to explain this. But yes, Sarah and Alan, who have now gone back in time to when they were kids but still have their adult memories, get married and grow up together, and then they like orchestrate these other children. Yeah. They're like, oh, we're going to hire their parents to work for our company. We're going to make sure their parents don't get any vacation, so their parents don't die.
They make the point that the town has really fallen into disarray. And so you could make the point that essentially Alan and Sarah have single-handedly brought it to life.
Did you guys notice the snow in the Christmas scene at the end of the movie?
I did not.
No.
John?
I was just caught up in that it was a Christmas movie. Like, we can add this to our Christmas movie roster.
Should have saved it for our Christmas movie next month. So this movie was filmed in Vancouver, which has been several of the things that we've watched in the last year. Kylan and I are living in Vancouver now, so I tried to keep my eye out for locations that I might recognize, but even if I did, this movie's 30 years old. Everything's changed.
Oh my goodness. You guys could have done a tour.
That's the lion. That's the lion.
The lion is still there in that house. They totally destroyed that house, by the way. So normally I don't even talk about Vancouver because it's just par for the course that a lot of the things that we watch are filmed in this city. But what was weird was the director felt so passionately about the snow in that Christmas scene. That's not fake snow. They sent people to the mountains in northern Vancouver to bring back snow so that they could have snow on the ground for that scene. And that's why I brought it up, is I was like, even knowing that fact, I didn't notice the snow in the Christmas scene, so I wasn't sure if anybody else did.
That was half of the budget for the movie, was getting that snow.
Go to the top of that mountain and get snow. This was Kirsten Dunst's breakout role. Honestly, I think she was the worst person in the show. I liked the younger brother more than her. Did she do it for anybody?
Oh, I have really nice hair.
I don't know. I thought she did a good job. I mean, we're talking about a 14-year-old actress. I thought she did a great job for what she was given.
I kid you not. when it first panned around and we saw Peter, the first thing I thought is that kid has amazing hair.
I just thought he was such a cute little dude. The only issue I had with Peter was that they say he never talks.
And then he talks
But
constantly.
he talks all the time. You just
Yeah.
have to assume that he's not talking when he's off screen. Because anytime
Yeah.
he's on screen, he's talking. And I get it. He doesn't talk around people who are strangers or who aren't his family or whatever. But we only see him with people that he trusts. So we see him talk the whole movie.
Well, with people he trusts and a crazy Tarzan man, but he trusts him too.
Yeah.
So at one point in the movie, Peter saves the Jumanji game from the river, and then Alan, Robin Williams' character, is kind of upset with him shortly afterwards. Does anyone understand why that was the case?
The interpretation I got from it is that Alan sees too much of himself in Peter. Because Alan had to grow up as a 10-year-old boy locked in a jungle for 26 years. And essentially, Peter is being put through the same hellscape that he was. And he doesn't like that.
Wasn't really explained, so. Because remember, everyone's like, good job, you saved the game. And then Robin Williams is like, huh, and walks away. And they're like, what's his problem? And then they never really explore it.
His dad is the same.
Robin Williams' dad.
Yeah, is the same actor as the character who plays Von Pelt, the hunter who's trying to kill him.
That's cool.
Which,
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
And so that's something that they do in Peter Pan. Very often, the darling children's father also plays Hook. So that's meant to have a lot of messaging that's below the surface. This person that he has conflict with, pushing him, and fears, is someone who's literally hunting him and challenging him for his life. Do people have any thoughts about that undertone?
I thought it was very cool. The end resolution scene where Von Pelt is proud of Robin Williams for finally giving himself up and dying like a man. I thought that was a cool scene. I like how that ties back to his relationship with his dad.
Yeah, I also have a lot of questions about, his name's Von Pelt?
Yeah, the hunter.
How did he get into the game?
Robin Williams has seen that guy before, right? Because when they roll
Yeah.
the dice, and
He
he's
was
like,
already hunting him.
But I mean, like, a wall of paint falls on him. He reaches out his hand, and we were unclear. There was a ring on a finger, so we weren't sure if he was a married man.
A Mrs. Von Pelt somewhere out there.
I didn't watch it. Like, I probably caught a couple episodes, but there's no way I remember. But there was a cartoon that tied into this show back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
that's Repressed Nostalgia.
And so
Where did that come from?
that cartoon would tell you that there were several other people in Jumanji who had played the game from different generations, if that makes sense. Jumanji is an eternal place, so you could have people from 100 or 200 or 300 years ago interacting with someone who played the game now. I don't know the lore well enough, but that could imply that Von Pelt maybe played the game at some point.
The only thing that I think dismisses that idea that he is part of the game is the fact that at a certain point, Sarah confronts Von Pelt, and he's got the barrel aimed at her, and he says, "Relax, I would have shot you by now if I was trying." And she asks, "Why?" And he says, "It's because Alan rolled the dice."
Yeah.
Which makes it seem like he is a part of the game set by the rules of the game.
No, I agree with that.
His face is also etched onto the outside of the board game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the clear one.
There is something I want to bring up. This movie is a treasure trove of amazing one-liners. I wrote down a couple that I really liked. One of them is they walk up to the psychic's place and they're like, "Oh, maybe she'll know where Sarah went." And Peter goes, "Of course she'll know. She's a psychic." And Alan's like, "Yep, that checks out." Another one is Alan is in the quicksand floor and they pass him a coat hanger that he grabs onto, and it breaks apart. And then they pass him a trombone, and he grabs the end of it, and it comes apart. And he shouts at them, "Stop giving me things that come apart!" And the other one I wrote down, which I really loved, is the point where they're stuck in the floor, and the spiders show up. And Judy screams. And Alan goes, "What? What is it? What is it?" And she's like, "Oh, it's nothing." He goes, "No, you don't go, ah, for nothing." That line is comedy gold right there.
Something I wanted to bring up is when they first introduced the lion at the very beginning. The lion like steps on the piano, and that's its introduction. It's
That
very
was cool. I do agree. That was really neat how they introduced the lion.
You don't get to see it. It just like steps on the piano, and so then the characters.
And then it makes that like horror sound of like just hitting all the keys on the piano naturally. Yeah, it's cool. I don't know if you can reuse that entrance ever again, but I thought that was a really creative way of doing it.
I think in comparison to how horrible the monkeys looked, the lion actually is passable.
Yeah.
Especially when it was like found lounging in the room, when it's not painted to be such a scary thing and just a big lazy cat. It looks really good, I would say. It's just not impressed and doesn't want to be there.
Do we want to talk about the monkeys?
There's not much to talk about, in all honesty, besides their horrible visage.
I think there is one thing to talk about with the monkeys, and that is cheating.
Oh, yeah. If you ever cheat at Jumanji, you turn into a monkey. Or a citizen of Whoville. One of the two.
There's really no downsides to turning into a monkey other than you start to lose your ability to speak and you lose a turn.
In the movie, the young boy Peter tries to finish the game by dropping the die so they get a high number, but because he cheats, he slowly turns into a monkey.
Do you think after a certain point he would become a monkey?
No, don't make me into one of those things. No.
The monkeys, I don't know what draws them to vehicles, but they seem to be really
Grand Theft
invested.
Auto.
And really good at it, too. They're a better driver than Robin Williams is.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what the Jumanji world is really like. Maybe it's more like Zootopia.
I was thinking about it. They could have made the monkeys a lot more menacing if they just pushed them the same way you think about gremlins. Like there's a part when the monkeys are raiding the kitchen and one of them grabs just a handful of knives. Like that's intimidating.
Yeah.
If you were in a room with wild animals and they suddenly start weaponizing themselves with things that could seriously hurt you, that's suddenly more dangerous. But when they're stealing TVs and running around, it's not as intimidating, I think.
They used a shotgun at one point.
They do use a shotgun. Like one of them holds a gun in his left hand while they're riding a motorbike, and I'm like, this is it. They're going to start shooting at Carl and Alan. And instead, they just speed up and drive away. And I was like, okay, it's a waste of a scene, I guess.
Do people have anything they want to say before we go into closing comments?
I haven't come up with a cookie yet.
Okay.
I'm 90% sure that Alan in this movie would not speak English by the time he got out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I was
20
thinking
years
that
of
too.
now. Well, once again, if we circle back to the fact that Von Pelt was there might be other English
that's fair.
But I can see the case for it for sure. And it's not like he's having conversations with Von Pelt.
Yeah.
How did Von Pelt get ammunition when he was in Jumanji?
Well, I'm in the assumption that if you have a random safari dude, he probably has a camp of some kind. That could even explain why the monkeys know how to drive. Is always ATVs.
The monkeys have camps.
Maybe this really is Tarzan.
The monkeys drive the motorcycles in the camp.
The monkeys are always climbing into their fridges at their camps.
Of course.
And
there is one other thing I want to talk about.
Always playing pianos in that place.
Yeah.
There's one other thing I want to talk about, and that's the final scene of this movie, where Jumanji is thrown into a river with a bunch of bricks tied to it, so it'll be never found again. Then, Jumanji washes up on the shore of some other country. That doesn't make sense with how bricks work and underwater. But the other thing is, the people walking by are not speaking English. Jumanji is a game in English. Would they even understand what's happening?
And we don't know. It's a magical game. Maybe the instructions change. But yes, I
title
made a
was
lot
so-
of assumptions about that too. When I watched the movie the first time, I assumed that it ended up in France or something because I think they're speaking French, right, John? Okay.
Yeah.
So I assumed that it ended up in France. However, the later movies that tag on to this imply that it washed up here in North America. So
Quebec?
maybe Quebec. The implication is, you're right, Chance, it just went downriver.
This was something I had forgotten, and upon rewatch, thought it was interesting that the thing that pulls people to find the Jumanji game is that it almost calls out to them with a rhythm, but not everyone hears the sound. It's like the game chooses people to hear it so that they go find it and play it.
The other thing I found very interesting about it is that when they hear the drums, Sarah and Peter are obviously distracted. Now, they're probably just distracted by the drums. That makes sense. But in the initial flashback, back in the 1800s, the boy falls into the pit, the drums start, and he says, "It's trying to get me." Which leads me to believe it's a lot more than just it calls to you. I think it's more like it puts you under a spell. When you hear the drums, you have to open the box, is what it seems to imply.
Yeah, because they do a lot of irrational things. He literally starts digging in an active excavation site.
Closing time?
Closing time.
All right. We'll save you a couple seconds extra there, Kai. I know you're deep in thought. John, revisiting this movie, when's the last time you watched this?
Maybe like 15 to 18 years ago or something.
Okay. And how much of this did you remember? Is this a fairly
A
fresh...
lot.
Okay.
Yeah, so I remembered the order of all the things. So when they were rolling the dice, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be the flower one, followed by this one, followed by this one. I just thought it was a super cool movie as a kid. So it always ingrained in my mind what things would come up next.
Yeah, I like to imagine John's like, "Let's watch it again." And Dad's over in the corner, "Not again."
So what was this experience for you then, John? Like, this was all fairly fresh in your memory then?
Yeah, and it was a positive experience. I still think it's a really decent movie. I know we chose this film because you still have nightmares from time to time about it. But I really felt like we weren't watching a movie to bully it. It was like, let's watch a classic.
Sure. Would you watch this one again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in due time, I'm sure I'll watch it again.
Chancellor.
I think this is a very solid movie. I think you could probably safely give this movie a 3. However, I am a sucker for Robin Williams. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. So I'm pushing this up to a 4. This is a good movie that I recommend you watch. It isn't one of the greatest of all time, but you won't lose anything by watching Jumanji. You'll only gain.
Yeah, I feel like I appreciate certain things about the new Jumanjis. And it's kind of neat that they decided to take it in a different direction and play with it. But part of me would have almost wanted to see a sequel to the original. And I know that the new ones are kind of sequels in a way, but the difference in tone. This was a thriller adventure first with comedy because Robin Williams was in it. But the new ones are just comedy.
What would you want to see in the sequel to this, John? Because isn't that movie just Zathura?
The cast is so fundamentally strong in this. Robin Williams is in this movie as the comedy, but above all else, he plays the rest of the role exceedingly well.
Yeah.
He plays the point of a man who laughs and makes jokes and stuff because he's so scared that he doesn't know what else to do.
But the end of this movie, the characters where we leave them would never play this game again. So the sequel would not be with these characters.
Unless another person has found the board game and these characters are the only people that know how to deal with Jumanji.
I would be on the side that you could have a different cast, but you need to have someone who could fundamentally play a very similar role to that. Like Harrison Ford, I feel like would do very well in a movie like this. An old, sarcastic man who's just so close to death at every moment that he doesn't know what else to do.
I would make the case I don't want to spoil a movie that we're not even reviewing, but Zathura has a hardened, sarcastic, satirical person as one of the characters who's seen it all and is just over it. They're not as old as Harrison Ford. They're like in their 20s. But I like Zathura. It isn't this movie. I don't think Zathura would have gotten a sequel if it was the first movie. But it really is just Jumanji again without the star power that Robin Williams brings. I guess I'll go next. Buy Kai a tiny bit more cookie thinking time.
Keep baking time.
I'm baking.
It's embarrassing that this is my childhood trauma right here. This movie is not scary at all. Like I said, Bonnie Hunt is super solid in this movie. Everyone else does a good job, but she is a standout for me. Watching this movie makes me actually want to watch more of her movies and see if she just gets better and better, because she is in everything. But up until this podcast, I'd kind of been taking her for granted. I don't know if I love this movie as much as everyone else seems to. It did have a major impact on tons of people's childhoods. But rewatching it, it's just okay for me. I wouldn't give it a 4 like you did, Chance. It's probably a 3 for me. I have not watched this movie since the 90s. I did watch it multiple times back then just to make sure that the trauma was really baked in. But I don't care if I see this movie again or not. If I do, I will have a good time. But I never have to see this movie again.
I think you're just on the side that you're actively avoiding this movie because every night you can't sleep.
Yeah, Dad talked to his therapist, and the therapist says Jumanji isn't real, so...
Kai's putting up with my night terrors every evening. Not the monkeys! Not the monkeys!
He's being very calm.
Not the spiders. They look too much like RC cars.
Not RC cars! Not RC cars! All right, Kai. Cookie time.
Had enough time in the oven. Show us what you made.
I've got the hardest job out of anybody.
Then don't rate them on cookies. You chose this.
Chance just has to choose.
You want to see how easy it is to do it, Kai?
Dad and
CGI
John just have
cookie.
to say.
Every time we give you a cookie, you complain about it. So you don't get to play that card.
Dad and John just get to say yes or no. But I'm over here sitting in the corner thinking, what kind of a cookie is about a jungle, but also can just be made up to be whatever I want? Because I guess I've given up on the cookie.
Crunched car cookie.
What, Chance?
Crunched car cookie.
Oh yeah, of course, the greatest cookie.
You don't want our suggestions, because every time that I give you a
suggestion. What would you say?
You're asking me this
What
time?
would you say? What would you say?
CGI cookie.
I've thought of the CGI cookie
Oh,
Chance.
CGI cookie.
I've thought of them all.
I thought you were going to say, like, imaginary cookie.
Schizophrenic cookie.
Okay, give me a second to think about it.
You had all the world debate.
I didn't think that I was allowed to give you a cookie.
Because the difficult thing is that I don't think there's a regular kind of cookie that fits this. Monster cookie, bam. That's the easiest one I got so far.
Well, I guess you're using it at Halloween. There we go.
Yeah, as good as I'm gonna get.
Did you like your monster cookie?
I like monster cookies.
Did you like this movie?
Oh yeah, this movie's okay.
I like the cookie more than a movie.
Yeah, I agree. Cookie's better than the movie. I would rather be eating a cookie.
The cookie that is loosely tied to this movie is better than the movie.
I mean, I'm imagining that the movie is better than the book, and then the cookie is better than the movie.
It's a cookie based on a book.
This cookie is book flavored.
Okay, well, at least this cookie's edible. We've had worse. So, yeah, wrapping it up. As promised last time, we're trying to get ahead of the curve and tell people what we're watching next time. So next time will be our Christmas episode. just like last year, episode number 7. This movie is going to be Aliens First Christmas, which is...
No! Never again!
Have you watched Aliens First Christmas, Chance?
Yes, I have. I've seen every Christmas movie my mom owns, which is 80, by the way. And one of them is Aliens First Christmas.
Chance, have I seen Aliens First Christmas?
I don't think so, because you didn't recoil the moment he said it.
Yeah, but I might have repressed nostalgia.
We can do both. Repressed nostalgia and Christmas nostalgia. So, yes, we're going to do Aliens First Christmas. Where can you find it? I'm pretty sure...
A dumpster. A garbage can.
You can find it for free on YouTube. It was on Tubi as well, I think. Honestly, it's not even a movie. It was a second attempt at a pilot for a TV show that wasn't picked up. So... as far as looking for things that absolutely no one cares about,
this is it.
This is the bottom of the barrel. No one on earth cares about the rights to this show. Yeah, it's just 20 minutes of our childhood. We'll see what happens. Does anyone have any other thoughts before we call her today?
Praise Beethoven?
Yeah.
Look out for weirdos.
Look out for RC cars disguised as spiders. Just look out for demon CGI monkeys wielding guns.
They won't shoot them at you. Don't worry.
Look out for windshield piercing mosquitoes. Look out for friendly lions that just want to snuggle in your bed and break up your door a little bit or play the piano.
Look out for lions with a master's degree in piano.
Yeah, there it is. Look out for police cars that sometimes the brakes don't work and sometimes they do.
Look out for John falling asleep at this outro.
Look out for John falling asleep in every episode of Bullied Nostalgia. Look
I fall
out
asleep
for
in movies,
when you
falls
open the
asleep
door to
sometimes.
the mansion that you moved into and enough water pours out of it to flood an entire city.
Look out for cheaters who have turned into demonic monkeys.
Looking out for ending the call.
Looking forward to ending the call.
All right. Good night, everybody.